Luminaries on the stage, and before I go beyond that, I would really compliment Colonel Harrison, and of course, what a lovely insight he's given, Mr. Pushpinder. Galaxy of intellectuals. It's my proud privilege today that amidst us, I do have my 2IC when I was born in the unit as a second lieutenant, and he taught me how to crawl amongst the thorns. And if I'm standing over here, I owe it to you, sir, Colonel MNP Kala. I bow down with respect. I also am privileged and great honor for me that General Sabharwal is also here. Since Colonel Kala is over here, I would like to relate to you a true story. What happened when I was a second lieutenant. We were in Sikkim, we were in Neola, and we had a GOC called General Dalbir Singh, 6 feet 4 inches tall. In his boots, he had carried an awe about himself. There was a demonstration on mining and mine breaching. So, since the wind factor is hell of a lot, the person was reading the script in the cabin of a Shaktiman truck. Somehow he was going behind time. Someone opened the door of the vehicle and said, "Cheti kar pai, deri ho rahi hai." And he used Punjabi has a lot of flavor, and it's inherent in Punjabi. He used one or two abuses. Now everything came on the mic. And we were second lieutenants, and we got scared today. My God, the general is going to really take us to task. Notwithstanding, he came ahead and he said, "Gentlemen, very well laid out demonstration. You recall that, sir, that particular incident?" And he said, "When you handle the mic, be careful." Then he said, "There is a true story. And before I say that, with due humility to the ladies, I'll not be brash in my statement. Do pardon me, since it's a true story." He said the demonstration was being taken by General Harbaksh. Very towering personality again, army level demonstration. He went ahead, he stood with his MA and said, "I thank the Honorable so-and-so, I thank the Honorable so-and-so, I thank the Honorable so-and-so." And he turned round towards his MA and asked in Punjabi, "Aur koi BC ta nahi reh gaya?" You understand what BC means in Punjabi. Well, he managed to survive and he continued as the army commander. So I'm very, very scared. So I hope you remember that incident which was there. Gentlemen, today I'll take about an hour. I shall be talking about the J&K quagmire. Now, in our security calculus, J&K figures very high on the metrics of concerns. The entire situation in J&K has been created on account of Pakistan's design to assert the state of J&K. Right from the beginning, we have the separatist lobby over here who act as a catalyst, and I dare say they are a constituency of Pakistan in India. I'll make a very controversial statement. The situation has changed. I would say it is not worsened when it started off in 1990, but it is yet to transcend into the law and order domain. When I'm saying this situation, I crossed Banihal in 1990 February to take over a battalion. Every house, starting from Banihal, anywhere in the valley, had Pakistani flags. They used to show V for victory and spit. There were 6,500 terrorists operating in the valley. Today, the poisoning of minds is there. It's a different form, but you don't find Pakistani flags anymore on the houses, etc. This poisoning of mind which is there, especially amongst the youth, which is slightly dangerous, and the terrorist content has been reduced to a figure of about 237. I shall quote to you subsequently. What is more important is that radicalization that is taking roots in Kashmir, and Wahhabization, courtesy the Rukuns who've come from the Deobandi sect and from Saudi Arabia. They are the ones responsible. There is another phenomenon which has emerged in this area called the agitational terrorism. With due humility, I'm very proud to say that I had used this word first in 2009, October, in my very first interview to the press. I had said, I'm not bothered about the terrorist content over here, which I can contain. I am bothered about hujums moving into the streets, going in for agitational terrorism and paralyzing the state. The next is a whole lot of articles. How can a general take away the basic right in democracy to agitate? I said, well, you can agitate, but you can't take law into your hand. That becomes agitational terrorism. Burhan Wani was mentioned by Mr. Pushpender. Do you know how much was the loss? 1,600 crores, just because of one individual being killed. 42 schools were burnt. They were burnt with a different purpose. And he indirectly did mention, they do not want the Kashmiri youths to study. They want them to go to madrasas. At the end of it, when they emerge out of madrasas, they are not qualified to take any job. They're jobless. The only option left for them is to join the terrorist ranks. Well, I would say that the situation in J&K has been triggered because of the decision of accession. So it actually comes in the domain of politico-diplomatic domain. But I say that it is now in a politico-diplomatic military domain, because military is the one which is creating a conducive environment. Until the time we do not have a conducive environment, I'm sorry, no diplomatic and political endeavor can ever succeed over here. The problem which is happening in the valley, unfortunately, is political squabbling which is going on. And I would even go to the extent of saying lack of political will. No, how have we gone ahead? Sorry. Can we reverse it? The general situation. Go back. Yeah, I can go to historical contours. I'll keep indicating to you. Okay. I finished this, get on to the historical. Sorry, I told you I'm very scared of the mic. And of course, now, as for the historical contours are concerned, gentlemen, let me tell you, there was a grand design way back in 1935. And this was on account of the deceitful mind of the Britishers. The Britishers never wanted, they knew independence is coming, that India should have any access to the Asian republics through the Wakhan corridor. Therefore, they took a ploy and said that Maharaja's forces are not capable of defending Gilgit-Baltistan. Therefore, Gilgit be given on lease for 30 years. And subsequently, the deceit came forth again. Once the independence took place, they coolly got in William Scott, Major William Scott, who carried out a bloodless coup, dethroned the governor there, Brigadier Gansara Singh, and hoisted a Pakistani flag. They wanted, Britishers all along wanted a buffer between India and the Asian republics. Now, August 47, all of you know, there were 565 states. 562, they signed the instrument of accession. Three were Hyderabad, Junagadh and J&K. Hyderabad, as a matter of fact, was in May when Nizam issued a farman saying, we are going to remain independent. He started even having a dialogue with Portugal to take Goa on lease, and he sent his trade representatives to Europe. That is the kind of thing. Now I shall show you the instrument of accession. I'm sorry you can't read the print. Now this was a cyclostyle paper. Al-Salam of Australia, he said that it was like signing any driving license. I, so-and-so, etc., abide by so-and-so, etc., hereby agree to accede to India. And the Governor General in the next para, he writes, I hereby accept the accession. The second side, if you see, very difficult to see, I'm so sorry. The date written is also August. Because most of the people they signed starting from 7th August onwards. It has been scored off and written October. So it was like a cycle-style paper. Nowhere was it written that the will of the people shall be exercised in writing, neither in the instrument of accession, nor in the schedule that was there along with it. The Maharaja, starting from 15th of August, he went in for a standstill agreement. This is the time when Jinnah took advantage. And he launched Operation Gulmarg. Jinnah actually wanted to send in the army, but the Supreme Commander, Field Marshal Auchinleck, he said no. So they gathered about 18 Lashkars, basically from Gilgit-Baltistan, and under one Colonel Akbar Khan, became General Akbar Khan later on, they came into, there were 10 Lashkars to Rajouri Punch, 6 on Muzaffarabad Uri axis, basically center of gravity being Srinagar and blocking Banial, and 2 came down from Titwal onto Sopore. When he saw this, he signed the instrument of accession on 26th of October 47. I would like to tell you that before the start of Operation Gulmarg, Major Kalkat, who later on became a general, these are some of our infirmities which I am trying to highlight. He was in Marali in Bannu, came through a signal which stated Operation Gulmarg. He read that, he opened the letter, he was put under house arrest, he escaped. And he travelled through a goods train, reached Delhi on 18th of October. He presented that plan to the government. The government did not pay any heed to what he had said. And 22nd of October, Operation Gulmarg started off. 27th of October, the Indian troops landed there. Now, this instrument of accession, which was signed, I would like to tell you, I was attending a seminar in Delhi when a very senior politician from the royal family, J&K, he mentioned, we acceded to India, but we did not merge with India. I did not want to embarrass him. I met him during lunchtime and I said, sir, because he happened to be from our regiment and Honorary Colonel of the regiment, I said, sir, there is a difference in connotation. Merger was like the East India Agency, there were Indian provinces, 17 of them, East India Agency merged with Chhattisgarh Agency and they formed Orissa. 30 hill states, small states of erstwhile Patiala state, they merged with Himachal. Smaller states, they merged on account of sustainability, financially and administratively, with bigger states. Accession was totally different. That was amalgamation. Accession was agreed to be under. So I explained to him, he had no other reason to explain on that. Now, after the Indian forces landed 48, till 48 we fought. 2nd December to 31st December there was a stalemate, and then 1st January there was a ceasefire. Now this was the map, almost. Now of course the LC has been drawn, the IB is not there, but the end of it, what today stands on account of violation of the 3 conditions that were given. Pakistan has 34% of the territory, we have 45, China and Aksai has 21%. Now this ceasefire, that gave 3 conditions, which was told earlier. I'll just add on to the dimensions of it. 3 conditions was immediate cessation of hostilities, which took place. Then was withdrawal of troops. That means Pakistan was supposed to go beyond the J&K borders. They never went. And 3rd condition was plebiscite. Key word is, these were sequential and consequential. As a consequence of ceasefire, there will be withdrawal. As a consequence of withdrawal, there will be plebiscite. So the sequence is broken at the 2nd stage itself. So with what defensible equity does Pakistan have to ask for a plebiscite? Yet, we continued harping that we should have plebiscite because we had the trump card of Sheikh Abdullah with us. But even right up to 1950, Liaquat Ali Khan, he said no. He knew that we will win hands down. So what is Pakistan claiming now that we have not gone in for plebiscite? Now you bring in plebiscite. I'll get on to important timelines. Just, 26th of January, 50, the Constitution of India was written, all of you know. India, that is Bharat, comprises unions and states, and its territory is the territory of these unions and states as mentioned in Schedule 1. J&K is mentioned in Schedule 1, so it is an inherent part of India. There is no doubt about it. October 51, we had the elections of the Constituent Assembly in J&K. Sheikh Abdullah was appointed the Prime Minister, Bakshi Ghulam Muhammad, Deputy with 8 cabinet ministers. Now there were 100 seats. Interesting. 43 for the Valley, 30 for J&K, 2 for Ladakh, and 25 for POK, which to date are kept. They are kept for POK in the J&K Assembly. November 52, very surreptitiously, Article 370 was introduced because that at the time, the future of Kashmir was not known. Half of it was the other side, plebiscite, hoga, nahi hoga. So, and Sheikh wanted concessions. He was a trump card, so this is given. I'll cover this in detail subsequently. But 53, because of the seditious statements, he was arrested. And thereafter, we never spoke of a plebiscite. 54, 35A has been beautifully brought in. I won't touch upon it. Now, 26th of January 57, the Constitution of J&K was written. Mark what I say. Chapter 1, Section 3 says, J&K is and will remain part of India. And Section 147 of that says, Neither will section 147 be abrogated, nor chapter 1, section 3. That means it was a permanent stand that J&K is part of India. So what is this cry about Azadi, pro-Pakistan, etc.? Their own chosen Constituent Assembly had said this, and that is where the fate of 370 also got ended, because the future of J&K thereafter was known. 63, they gave Sakshgam, 5,180 square kilometers. What happened? They brought in a third country. They changed the demography of POK. In 70, Bhutto, he changed the State Subject Act of Gilgit-Baltistan. So there was a total change. How can you compare apple with oranges? If in case of the plebiscite, I mean, the total demography is changed over here. We haven't changed at all. 71, we had the war. 65, first we had the war, we lost that. 70, I've told you. 71, when we had the war, we had a big advantage. But Pakistan, as usual, was up to tricks of deceit. Went back. Bhutto said, I'll come back to the state, but he never came back. And we gave back 93,000 prisoners. Otherwise, Kashmir could have been leveraged that time. We lost an opportunity. In 74, after the massive defeat, K2 was, Plan K2 was coined. K2 was Khalistan and Kashmir. Now, Mr. Hussain Haqqani, who was the ex-ambassador of Pakistan to India, he had said that the concept of irregular warfare was actually introduced by Ayub Khan. In 59, while talking to Eisenhower, he said, plebiscite doesn't seem to be a reality. For me to go and defeat India, it's going to be a tough fight. We may not get Kashmir. So irregular warfare is the answer. So he actually conceptualized, and all these things which came up subsequently, Topak, etc., were a fallout of that mindset which was there. Interestingly, in 75, the UN said that the factor of plebiscite in J&K doesn't hold good anymore. 78, I've told you, Optopac. The trigger in Kashmir, the poisoning of mind, started off with the 87 elections, where elections were totally rigged. 88, Musharraf, known as the butcher of Gilgit and Baltistan as a brigadier, went to Gilgit-Baltistan. The truckloads of Sunnis to further change the demographic. They're all Shias over there in Gilgit-Baltistan. And he raped, looted, killed the people over there, changed the demography of Gilgit-Baltistan for futuristic. 89 onwards, insurgency took root. 60,000 people crossed over. When I took over Gulmarg Battalion in 1990 February, I was told Gulmarg was like a highway. People used to go, there is Ravi and Carpenter Hut, there's a location there. Below that there is the track, and that was the highway. Anyway, we did check it out subsequently. 1990, the sad exodus of Pandits took place. Governor's rule was established, and AFSPA came in July 90. Now, I'd like to touch 2-3 aspects of AFSPA over here. AFSPA is not the first time when it has been introduced in J&K. It was also there, known as the Armed Forces Special Power Ordinance of 42 to cater for Quit India, United India Province Special Powers Act of 47 for situation in Assam and Bengal. Then, of course, it was also introduced in the East in 1958. There is a confusion which I like to kill over here, because this keeps coming up in J&K. Under Article 355 of the Constitution, the state is responsible, that is the country, the union government, is responsible to protect the states from external aggression and internal aggression, which got changed in 79 to internal disturbance. Therefore, you from the state can impose AFSPA in any state. I was having a discussion with a senior politician in J&K. He comes to me, he says, sir, if in case we remove Disturbed Area Act, aapko to AFSPA kahin ka nahi rahega. I said, who says? Disturbed Area Act is an act of the Legislative Assembly. It is to be renewed every year. AFSPA is an act of the Parliament, which is higher. Punjab, AFSPA came in first. So I told him, you've not even renewed your Disturbed Area Act after 1990. So don't be under an illusion. This is the kind of things these people keep coming up. 93, the Hurriyat was formed, conglomeration of 34 parties. They split into 2003. There were moderates and the hardliners. Gilani, the hardliner, Mir Waiz, of course, the soft. But 2016, April, they again united amongst themselves. Separatists, we are spending about 1,000 crores every year on them. We should stop that, take them to task. I'm very happy that the government has taken this action of sending the NIA, and people like Shabir Shah, I believe they are behind bar. Others should also be taken out of Kashmir. There is a provision in Supreme Court. Take them out, try them out over there. Yasin Malik, waging war against the state, killed Air Force officers. This needs to be done immediately, otherwise they are iconic in that area. Stone pelters, chief statement was very clear. If they impede army operations, they shall be treated as terrorists, because it has happened. On one account, 2 CRPF Jawans got killed because of stone pelting. And there are people like John Dayal, etc. They say, no, this will not happen. I told him, I take a challenge. You sit with the troops on the line of denial when stone pelting starts off and keep saying till the end, don't fire, don't fire. I said, you'll be the first one to leave a clean pair of heels and run away from there. That is the enormity of the assault which is there. Conversion of LC to IB, we should never agree. Musharraf and Prime Minister Manmohan almost agreed. Army put its foot down. There was a deep thought in it. They wanted CPEC to come up. And had we gone in that time for it, then we couldn't have questioned CPEC. We should never think of it. Engage the youth. We have to explore inter-Naseem clashes, because the kind of intelligence which is coming in, I have contacts in Kashmir, they keep telling, जिन के भी रिश्तेदार मर रहे हैं, हमारे लोगों को मार रहे हैं, वो दबादब information दिए जा रहे हैं. And there is a video which is floating around, I do not know the authenticity. Terrorist is pleading, भाई हमें हमारा काम करने दो, हमारी information मत दो. We have a battalion of Ikwanis, ex-terrorists. They're doing an excellent job. They need to be slightly propped up more. Then we have a system of proactive operations. If we posture, we got reserves in Northern Command. He'll be forced out to pull out troops from the western front. 17 odd brigades are there. The moment they posture here, the troop-to-ground density decreases there. They will start getting casualties, indirect approach. Army ops, come what may, cannot fill in political vacuum. They have to fill in this political uncertainty. I will not touch about technical equipment, etc. I want to touch for 2 minutes on AFSPA and 370. AFSPA first. Why did AFSPA come in? It came because of the proxy intent of Pakistan. Has it changed? No. So what are the requirement of changing AFSPA? When proxy intent is constant, let application of AFSPA also be considered along with this. Now 370, despite a lot of debates on it and sentiments being expressed, this is the bridge, etc. 370 was drafted under XXX1 of the Constitution, which is provisional, transition and temporary. That time, Pandit Nehru thought that this will fade away, and the moment the Constitution is there, this special autonomy that I am giving, this will fade away. But no, it continued. Now, legally speaking, I will counter it in an algebraic form. Is 370 part of the Constitution? Yes. Is there a provision in the Constitution to change or repeal any article in the Constitution? Yes. Which one? 368. Now, there is a clause 3 of 370 which says that this cannot be repealed without the concurrence of the Constituent Assembly. The President can do so, but not without the concurrence. Now, what does 368 subsequently say? It says, notwithstanding what is written in the Constitution, hinting what I would say is this clause 3. Notwithstanding what is written in the Constitution, under Article 368, you can repeal or abrogate an article so long it does not affect the basic structure of the Constitution. Now, what is the basic structure? In a man, it's the heart and the brain. If they are not there, well, he's destroyed. You can cut his limbs, etc. There's a case of between Keswananda and Kerala, April 74, where all judges, 13 judges of the Supreme Court sat over there and defined what is basic structure. 370 doesn't form part of that structure. Basic structure of the Constitution is, for instance, sovereignty, secularism, etc., etc. Therefore, can 368 repeal 370? Answer is yes. In final remarks, I would just say that people are center of gravity. Youth need to be addressed. Succor has to be provided to them. The separatists are the catalysts. They need to be removed immediately from this area. We require a strong government will, and the political vacuum needs to be filled. Next slide. Next slide. I have nothing more to add. And before I go into the question, I want to tell you there are a lot of ladies over here. Somehow the macho men species, we keep saying, oh, women are the weaker sex. Well, I don't agree with that. I have a lot of respect for the ladies. If you don't agree with me, on a wintry night, you try and pull the blanket from her, and you will know as to how strong she is. You'll be kicked out of the bed. With that, I think I thank you all for bearing with me. Sorry I've taken very long.